After years of being my family's ATM, I discovered they were using my money for a wedding I wasn't invited to. I still remember the day Dad walked out. I was 10, standing in our cramped kitchen in Columbus, watching Mom's mascara streak down her face as she screamed at him. Vanessa, only 5, clutched my leg, her tiny fingers digging into my skin. Dad looked at her with such coldness before turning to me with softer eyes. "I'll call you, Monica," he said. Then he was gone. 6 years have passed since I last spoke to Mom or Vanessa, though they've managed to find ways into my bank account despite the distance. From my modern home in suburban Ohio where I live with Daniel and our 2 children, their demands feel like echoes from another life, a life where I was never quite enough. Ohio winters can be brutal, but they're nothing compared to the chill I grew up with. After Dad left, convinced Vanessa wasn't his, a wall formed in our house. Mom never abused me, never yelled at me specifically, but her eyes held something whenever she looked at me. Resentment. I was Richard's daughter, undeniably so, with my hazel eyes and angular jaw. Vanessa, with features that sparked Dad's doubts, became Mom's whole world. Monica got to go to Westlake Academy, Vanessa would complain as a teenager, while she attended the struggling public school in our district. "Your sister's education is covered by her father," Mom would respond, never fighting for similar support for Vanessa. I often wondered why. When I turned 12, Dad arranged for my tuition to go directly to the school, cutting Mom out entirely. The day she found out, I heard her crying in her bedroom. She's worth something to him and I'm not. I became an intruder in my own home. Mom and Vanessa formed a unit, while I existed on the periphery. By 16, I secretly reached out to Dad. Our reconnection was slow but meaningful. He attended my college graduation while Mom and Vanessa sat stiffly in the back row. He walked me down the aisle at my wedding while Mom complained about the seating arrangements. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Monica, your father passed last night," his second wife said softly. "He left everything to you, about $400,000. When Mom and Vanessa found out, their disgust was palpable. Yet suddenly, my phone rang more often. Mom needed help with rent. Vanessa's car broke down. Each call ended with a subtle reminder of all they'd sacrificed for me, though I struggled to remember any sacrifices. Standing in my kitchen now, watching my children play in the yard, Daniel's arms wrap around me. "Your mom called again," he whispers. I nod, knowing exactly what she wants, what they both want. But the question eating at me remains. Would they even remember my birthday if I didn't have Dad's money? The phone rang at exactly 7:43 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember checking the time because Lily had just gone to bed, and James was finishing his homework at the kitchen table. Daniel raised an eyebrow when I showed him Mom's name on the caller ID. "You should take it," he said quietly. "It's been what, 3 months?" I braced myself before answering. "Hello? Monica?" Mom's voice sounded different, strained and hoarse. I wouldn't call if it wasn't serious. Something in her tone made my stomach clench. 6 years of minimal contact, and suddenly she sounded desperate. "What's wrong?" I asked, moving to the porch for privacy. "The house is falling apart." She took a shuddering breath. "The foundation is cracking, there's water damage in the ceiling, and the electrical wiring is shot. The inspector said it could collapse in the next big storm." I remained silent, processing this information. The house I grew up in had always been old, but dangerous. "I need to borrow money," she continued when I didn't respond. "About $100,000. My breath caught. 100,000? You have your father's money just sitting there. Her voice hardened slightly. "What were you planning to do with it anyway? Buy another fancy car?" "I don't own a fancy car, Mom." "Vanessa and I could be homeless. Is that what you want?" I hung up after promising to think about it, but the calls continued daily, sometimes twice daily. Each time, Mom's voice grew more desperate, more accusatory. "The ceiling in the kitchen collapsed last night," she told me a week later. "Do you want your mother and sister to die under a pile of rubble? Is that your plan?" "Why can't you get a home equity loan?" I asked. "The interest rates are criminal," she snapped. "You know I can't afford that on my salary." Daniel found me staring at our financial spreadsheets that night. "You're considering it?" he observed. "They're still family," I said weakly. He sat beside me. If you do this, we should set some boundaries. Maybe release the money in stages tied to specific repairs. The next day, I called Mom with my counteroffer. $50,000 transferred to a joint account where I could monitor the withdrawals and ensure the money went to actual contractors. Her silence lasted so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Mom? Why can't you just trust me? Her voice trembled. After everything I sacrificed raising you? It's not about trust, I lied. It's about financial responsibility. She eventually agreed, though her reluctance was palpable. I transferred the first $10,000 that afternoon, feeling a strange mix of virtue and foreboding. 3 days later, Mom called again. The contractor needs a larger deposit. Could you just transfer the rest to my personal account? This joint account thing is complicated. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. What contractor? I asked. What's their name? I'd like to speak with them directly. Another long pause. That night, as we lay in bed, Daniel turned to me. I've got a bad feeling about this, Mon. Something doesn't add up. I nodded in the darkness, my mind racing through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. What if the house wasn't in danger at all? What if this was just another way for them to get their hands on Dad's money? I had no idea then how deep the deception would go, or how much it would cost me. 2 months crawled by. I'd transferred a total of $20,000 in carefully measured installments, each accompanied by Mom's promises about contractor schedules and material deliveries. The updates grew increasingly vague, and my calls often went straight to voicemail. Daniel urged me to drive up and see the house for myself, but something always came up. Lily's dance recital, James's science fair, work deadlines that couldn't be ignored. Then came the call that shattered everything. Hey, Monica, Claire's cheerful voice filled my ear on a Tuesday afternoon. I can't believe you didn't tell me Vanessa is getting married. I just ran into Michael, my husband's cousin who runs that event planning business. He's designing the whole thing. My coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the kitchen tile. What? The wedding, at the Harrington estate no less. Michael says they've booked the whole venue for 100 guests. White roses everywhere, a 5-piece string quartet, the works. Claire paused. Monica, are you there? When? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Next month, June 18th. Didn't you get an invitation? Michael said the final guest list was confirmed last week. I mumbled something about checking the mail before ending the call. With trembling fingers, I logged into the joint account I had set up with Mom. The balance read exactly $0. Every cent I had transferred, all $20,000, had been withdrawn in increments over the past 6 weeks. Daniel found me staring at the screen, tears streaming down my face. The Harrington estate cost at least $30,000 for a Saturday in June, I whispered. That's not counting food, flowers, a dress. Call your mother, Daniel said, his voice tight with anger. I took a deep breath and dialed. Mom answered on the second ring, sounding almost cheerful. How's the house renovation coming along? I asked, amazed at how steady my voice remained. Oh, it's coming along, she said vaguely. We've hired someone. They should be starting soon. Starting? After 2 months and $20,000? Her silence spoke volumes. Is Vanessa getting married? I asked flatly. Another pause. Who told you that? Is that where my money went, Mom? Not to fix a crumbling house, but to pay for Vanessa's dream wedding? A wedding I wasn't even invited to? Monica, you don't understand. You're right. I don't understand how my own mother could lie to me about something this serious. I don't understand how you could take my money under false pretenses. It wasn't false. The house did need repairs. We finished those months ago with the money you sent for my knee surgery. The room seemed to tilt sideways. The knee surgery that never happened? I needed that money more for the house than for my knee. And now Vanessa needs— Don't you dare say she needs my money, I hissed. What she needed was a mother who fought for her child support. What she needed was to grow up with some integrity. I hung up, then immediately dialed Margaret Johnson, our neighbor for over 20 years. Monica, dear, how are you? Her warm voice brought back memories of fresh-baked cookies and after-school chats at her kitchen table. I'm calling about my mom's house, I said carefully. Have you noticed any construction crews there recently? Construction? She sounded confused. No, honey. They finished all that back in January. Looks beautiful now, new siding, repainted porch. They even hosted Vanessa's engagement party in the backyard last month. So many lilies and champagne flutes, like a wedding itself. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. January. They'd completed renovations in January using the money I'd sent for Mom's supposedly urgent knee surgery she never had. I thanked Margaret and hung up, my mind racing through every financial request over the years. The emergency dental work, the car repairs, the property tax bills. Had any of it been real? Mom wasn't just lying about the house, I told Daniel, my voice hollow. She's been lying about everything. What are you going to do? He asked, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I stared out the window, watching our children play in our carefully tended yard, built on honesty and trust. I'm going to that wedding, I said finally, but not as a guest. I spent that night pacing our bedroom, my mind racing. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. First, I closed the joint account I'd set up with Mom. Then I blocked both her and Vanessa's numbers on my phone. It felt strange, liberating but terrifying, like cutting a cord that had been slowly strangling me for years. Are you sure about this? Daniel asked, as I placed my phone on the kitchen counter, watching the notification of 3 missed calls from Mom flash across the screen. For the first time in my life, I said, I'm making a decision about them based on reality, not guilt. It took less than 24 hours for them to switch tactics. My email inbox filled with increasingly desperate messages from Vanessa, someone who hadn't bothered to contact me for birthdays, holidays, or even when my son was born 3 years ago. Monica, please pick up. This is important. You can't just ghost your family like this. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Don't ruin this for me. Each message made me more certain I was doing the right thing, but Mom was craftier. She went straight for Daniel. His phone rang during dinner. He glanced at the screen, then at me, eyebrows raised. It's your mother. I nodded for him to answer, setting it on speaker so I could hear. Daniel? Mom's voice cracked with well-practiced desperation. Thank God you answered. Monica won't talk to me. She's abandoned her family when we need her most. Daniel's eyes met mine across the table. What exactly do you need, Linda? The house repairs aren't finished, she wailed. The contractor says we need another $30,000 or they'll walk off the job. Everything will be ruined. Daniel's voice remained steady. Linda, we know the truth. About the wedding, about where the money really went. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Fine, she finally hissed, her tone transforming completely. So you know, what difference does it make? Vanessa deserves a beautiful wedding after everything she's been through being abandoned by her father. Because of your lies, I interrupted, unable to stay silent any longer. Monica? She paused. You're there too? Yes, Mom. I'm here, listening to you try to manipulate my husband after you stole from me. Stole? Her voice rose indignantly. It's not stealing when it's family. You have $400,000 from your father, a man who wanted nothing to do with us. Dad wanted nothing to do with your lies, I shot back. She ignored me completely. Vanessa wants her dream wedding. What's wrong with that? You're her sister. You should want to help. By being lied to, by not even being invited to the wedding my money is paying for? Another silence. Then, Vanessa didn't want to ask you directly. She didn't want to feel like she owed you. The absurdity of her statement hit me like a physical blow. So instead, you both decided to trick me? That's better somehow? It was easier this way, she said, as if explaining something to a child. Now that you know, can we please move forward? The caterer needs final payment by Friday, and the florist— I hung up, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. 2 days later, as I was getting the kids ready for school, a final voicemail appeared. I almost deleted it without listening, but some masochistic curiosity made me press play. Monica, I know you're angry. Mom's voice sounded unnaturally calm. But since you already know about everything, there's no reason to keep pretending. We still need another $40,000 to cover the remaining wedding expenses. I've sent you the account details. Please transfer the money by tomorrow so we don't lose our deposits. Not a single word of apology. Not a hint of remorse or understanding. Just another demand, as if I were nothing more than an ATM with legs. I deleted the message, then methodically blocked their email addresses, social media accounts, and even Linda's landline. As I completed this digital excision of the two people who should have loved me most, I felt something unexpected. Not sadness or anger, but clarity. For 38 years, I'd been waiting for them to see me, really see me, as family. But in their eyes, I'd never been anything but a resource to exploit, a connection to my father's wallet. First his, now mine. They're blocked, I told Daniel as he handed me a cup of coffee. All of them. Every possible way they could reach me. He nodded slowly. And how do you feel? I looked out at our backyard where James was helping Lily tie her shoes before the school bus arrived. Like I'm finally free to be part of a real family. Ours. 3 days after I blocked them, the calls started coming from unfamiliar numbers. Each time I'd answer cautiously only to hear Vanessa's increasingly frantic voice. Monica, please, we just need 10,000 more to finish paying for everything. Are you really going to let your sister look like a fool on her wedding day? After the fifth call, I stopped answering unknown numbers altogether. The text messages were worse. Desperate pleas mixed with thinly veiled threats about family loyalty and sisterly obligations. I deleted them all unread after the first few. Then came the final message from Mom, from yet another new number. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me pause. If you don't send the money, you are no longer my daughter. I stared at those words for a long time, feeling nothing but a strange sense of peace. She'd finally said out loud what I'd known since childhood. Her love was conditional, based entirely on what I could provide. You okay? Daniel asked, finding me in our home office. I showed him the message. She's disowning me because I won't pay for Vanessa's wedding. He wrapped his arms around me. She can't disown what she never truly claimed in the first place. The morning of Vanessa's wedding arrived with no fanfare in our house. I made pancakes for the kids, helped James with his science project, and tried not to think about what might be happening across town at the Harrington estate. Around noon, my phone lit up with Claire's name. You would not believe what's happening, she said, without preamble, her voice a furious whisper. I'm hiding in the bathroom at your sister's wedding, and it's a complete disaster. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Michael just told me everything. Your mother and sister never paid the remaining balance for the reception. They paid the venue deposit with the money you gave them, but nothing else. No catering balance, no bar tab, no flowers beyond the basic package, no band payment. I closed my eyes, picturing the scene. What's happening now? It's awful, Monica. There's barely any food and just these tiny appetizer plates. No premium open bar like they promised everyone. Just house wine and beer. Half the centerpieces are missing because they only paid for the minimum. And your sister is standing there in her $12,000 dress looking like she's about to explode. Despite everything, a wave of secondhand embarrassment washed over me. Did Michael tell them he couldn't provide what they hadn't paid for? He tried. Your mother begged him last night, promised they'd pay an extra $10,000 after the wedding if he'd just front the expenses. He refused, of course. They already owed too much, so he scaled everything back to match what they'd actually paid for. I could hear voices rising in the background. The groom's family is furious, Claire continued. They're wealthy, you know. They expected the lavish wedding Vanessa promised. People are leaving already, and it's not even 2 o'clock. What about Vanessa? I found myself asking. She's in shock, standing in the corner with this frozen smile while people whisper, Oh God, now she's yelling at Michael. I've got to go. Claire hung up, but called back 20 minutes later. Your sister just publicly accused Michael of ruining her wedding. Said he took their money and delivered garbage. Your mother had to physically restrain her from throwing a champagne flute at him. What did Michael do? I asked, horrified. He almost told everyone the truth, that they couldn't afford what they'd promised. But your mother literally got on her knees and begged him not to humiliate Vanessa further. Claire paused. Monica, did you know about all this? I took a deep breath. They tried to scam me out of $100,000 for this wedding, Claire. They lied about needing house repairs. I gave them $20,000 before I figured it out. Jesus, she whispered. So that's why Michael said the deposit was paid but nothing else. After we hung up, I sat on our porch swing, watching James and Lily play tag in the yard. The weight I'd carried for years, the obligation, the guilt, the desperate need for approval, felt lighter somehow. Not gone, but transformed into something I could finally set down. Daniel joined me, handing me a glass of lemonade. You're very quiet. Vanessa's wedding is falling apart, I said. They couldn't pay for everything they promised. He nodded slowly. And how do you feel about that? Sad, I admitted. Not for them exactly, but for what could have been. If they'd just been honest, if they'd invited me as family instead of seeing me as an ATM, I probably would have helped anyway. Because that's who you are, he said, squeezing my hand. My phone buzzed with another text from an unknown number, undoubtedly Vanessa or Mom, with more accusations or pleas. I deleted it without reading and turned back to watch my children, my real family playing in the golden afternoon light. The morning after the wedding disaster, I was making coffee when my phone chimed with a new voicemail from an unlisted number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to listen. Mom's voice, slurred with either exhaustion or alcohol, filled my kitchen. You ungrateful bitch, she hissed, her words razor-sharp despite their wobble. After everything I sacrificed for you, after raising you, this is how you repay me? By humiliating your sister on the most important day of her life? I stood motionless, coffee forgotten, as her tirade continued. I should have known. You were always like him, selfish, cold. I'm done with you. Don't ever come back, don't ever call me Mom again. As far as I'm concerned, I only have one daughter now. The message ended, and I realized I was holding my breath. I exhaled slowly, waiting for the familiar pain, the guilt, the desperate need to make things right. But all I felt was relief. Everything okay? Daniel appeared in the doorway, concern etching his features. I played the message for him, watching his expression darken. She's disowned me, I said when it finished, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Officially. Daniel wrapped his arms around me. You know this isn't your fault, right? They brought this on themselves. I know, I said, and for the first time I truly did. They never saw me as family, just a wallet with legs. That afternoon, Margaret texted me. Heard about the wedding fiasco. Should have cut them off years ago, dear. You deserve peace. She was right. For so long, I'd been the dutiful daughter, the responsible sister, desperately trying to earn love that was never freely given. I'd been raised to believe family meant obligation regardless of how they treated you. But now I understood. Family means respect, honesty, and unconditional love. 2 weeks later, during our family movie night, a text came from yet another unknown number. I glanced at it briefly. Vanessa, claiming Mom was sick, needing money for treatment. Without hesitation, I blocked the number and set my phone aside. Everything okay? Daniel whispered as the kids argued over which movie to watch. Perfect, I replied, and meant it. Lily crawled into my lap with her favorite stuffed rabbit, while James leaned against my shoulder. Daniel's hand found mine in the darkness as the movie began. This was what family truly meant. Not manipulation or guilt or conditional love, but this quiet contentment, this belonging. For 38 years, I'd searched for acceptance in the wrong places, tried to earn love from people incapable of giving it freely. Now, surrounded by those who loved me for who I was, not what I could provide, I finally understood. I hadn't lost my family by cutting ties with Mom and Vanessa. I'd found it.